Sweep Spot is a member of the Mice Chat Podcast Network. MicePod.com. Now, the magical kingdom in a mixed up world.
You're in the sweet spot, baby. You're in the sweet spot, girl. You're in the sweet spot, darling. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. You're in the sweet spot, baby. You're in the sweet spot, girl. You're in the sweet spot, darling. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. You're in the sweet spot, baby. You're in the sweet spot, girl. You're in the sweet spot, darling. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world. It's a magical kingdom in a mixed up world.
Welcome to the Sweep Spot. My name is Lynn, your host, and Ken's my co-host. Ken, how's it going?
It's going, Lynn. It is going. I'm so happy to be here. I am in my my sterile bubble, constantly disinfecting.
Constantly. This is episode 285.
285. You know, and the critics said it would never get past 284, but here we are.
They said it couldn't be done.
That's right. It's kind of fun to do the impossible, isn't it?
It is. Welcome to our show. Ken and I are both former Disneyland Custodio cast members, and we talk about Disneyland. We are also authors of the books called Cleaning the Kingdom. We have 2 volumes, and you can get those books on Amazon. You can get the second book on our website. They're both on Kindle. Audiobook is for the first book. You can get that where audiobooks are found. I mentioned the second book on our website, and I have signed copies. Both of us signed them for that one, so you can get those over there. It's cheaper than Amazon.
Wow.
So check it out. Also, we have a Patreon where we do 1 bonus episode per month. If you give $5 or more a month on Patreon, then you will get a bonus episode that's usually around 30 minutes of more fun.
Yeah, we don't take up too much of your time.
And if you don't want to go through Patreon, we have an option on our website, thesweetspot.com, where you can do it through PayPal, and then I will email you the episode personally. Also, we started up a few months ago. We started up a YouTube channel, the Sweep Spot YouTube channel, and we are doing live streams every other week for right now. Then we plan on doing them about once a month once the parks reopen. So check that out. We have a lot of fun on our live streams, a lot of fun discussions. People come on and they get to see our ugly mugs, and they get to chat.
He's talking about our cups, you know, the coffee mugs that we have. But.
Yes. And then you get to ask us questions or be a part of the discussion. So
That's right.
Our next one will be on May 29th. So it's at 7 p.m. Pacific time, May 29th. So mark your calendars.
That's 10 p.m. Eastern, folks. So.
And that's 8 o'clock Mountain Time.
Okay.
Okay. So also, I made an appearance on a podcast called the Three Mouseketeers podcast, and I had a lot of fun. We talked about our books and my time working at Disneyland and everything else. So check that out, the Three Mouseketeers podcast. So thank you for having me on. I had a wonderful time. Also, I think that'll be it, Ken.
All right.
I think that covers it. Yeah. So, up next, we're going to have
Wait, did we have
the current event.
We already went over who our new Patreon is?
but we have not gone over. I was saving it for the very end.
I like the way you build up the suspense there.
You like that?
That was very clever.
Yes. So yeah, we do have a new Patreon. Thank you, Ken. I have it right here in front of me too. Thank you to Miguel. How did you say that name? Venegas. Venegas. So sorry for butchering your name, but thank you so much, Miguel, for your contribution to the show. I think he friended me on Facebook, and we've had a discussion. So thank you so much for that. And look forward to that bonus episode. It's going to be coming out very soon.
And if you guys want to get it, and if you want your name butchered, sign up, man. Yeah.
Yes. All right. Well, tonight we're going to have a fun discussion about Fantasyland. But before that, we have the current events. Recording. Okay, now we're going to have the current events. Ken, what do you have for us?
Well, Lynn, Disneyland has a new president. Yes, again. The revolving door keeps revolving. As reported by Brady McDonald in the Orange County Register, the Disneyland Resort will get a new president as the Anaheim theme park's current leader moves into a new role overseeing the company's Disney Plus streaming service, and Disneyland's former president takes over the reins of Disney's theme park division. So Walt Disney World President Josh D'Amaro, who was here today and gone tomorrow. No, that's D'Amaro was named the chairman of Disney Parks, Experiences, and Products. D'Amaro was the Disneyland president before moving into the Disney World role in September. So look at that. He was September. Yeah. Well, just
I mean,
okay.
What do you think of that?
Well, I think there wasn't much choice, and I'll explain as we go. Ken Potrock I'm sorry, Ken, you've got a great first name. I just don't know how to pronounce the last name. Who has served as president of Disney Consumer Products, was named the new president of Disneyland. Current Disneyland president Rebecca Campbell was named the chairman of Disney's direct-to-consumer and international divisions. Campbell replaced D'Amaro during her brief 8-month tenure at Disneyland that included a 2-month coronavirus closure of the park. So basically 6 months. D'Amaro succeeds Chapek as chairman of Disney's 6 global theme park resorts in California, Florida, France, Japan, and China. Chapek replaced Bob Iger as Disney's CEO in February, just before the COVID-19 pandemic forced the closure of the Disneyland and Disney World resorts. Chapek still reports to Iger, who now serves as Disney's executive chairman. D'Amaro and Campbell will report to Chapek. Potrock, the new Disneyland president, will oversee a workforce of 31,000 cast members, if they can get them all back. That is. Potrock comes to Disneyland from Disney's Consumer Products division, where he led the company's global merchandising division since 2018. He has previously served as senior vice president of the Disney Vacation Club timeshare and Adventures by Disney Travel Planning Businesses. In 2015, he led the expansion and renovation of Disney Springs outdoor shopping mall at the Disney World Resort in Florida. He began his Disney career in 1996 as vice president of marketing for the Disney Cruise Line. So, let's see, in 1996, it's been 24 years. Why didn't you ever make president of Disneyland, Lynn? Anyway,
I don't know.
Campbell replaces Kevin Mayer, who is leaving the Disney executive suite to become CEO of TikTok. Now, maybe you're listening to us, a year or two after recorded and TikTok doesn't exist anymore. I don't know. Here's the deal. Okay, Chapek got promoted, right? Because Iger got kind of promoted, whatever. He was CEO and then got this new position of executive chairman. So they bring up Chapek as CEO, right? So he's no longer the head of Parks and Resorts. So there's that hole, right? They've got to fill that hole. And because Chapek got the promotion and not Kevin Mayer, who was overseeing the streaming service, Kevin Mayer's leaving, for TikTok. Now, that's not the first time Kevin Mayer left to do something for Playboy. And I think there's some speculation that people said, well, he's just, he couldn't be Disney CEO after. Well, it's they took him back after he left for Playboy, so I don't know. It just seems kind of weird. But, of course, eventually TikTok will probably get bought by somebody, maybe even Disney. So that's what people figure. People figure Kevin Mayer's counting on that. Eventually TikTok's going to get bought by somebody, and he will get a huge payout from that, or become some honcho at the company that acquires TikTok. But so basically there were two empty positions, right? Chairman of the Parks and Resorts and all that, and now the streaming service. So what do? You can't. I mean, you say, well, we can't promote DeMauro and Campbell because they've only been in their positions for a few months. If you don't promote them, who are you going to put there? You're going to put somebody from outside the company? You're gonna promote somebody from underneath them to leapfrog over them, and then either way, either of those two options, they might leave the company. So I guess you got to promote them and shuffle things around, and then promote. So yeah, it seems like I can remember when Disneyland didn't even have a president. You had Dick Nunes was in charge of Disneyland and Walt Disney World, I guess. And, you had people like Ron Dominguez and all that. But then Jack Lindquist was finally named president of Disneyland. And then he retired, and then they brought in Paul Pressler, right? And then they promoted Paul Pressler, and they bumped up Cynthia Harris, who was had followed Paul, and then she followed Paul when he left the company. And then they put Matt Ouimet in there, and it's been a revolving door, basically. After Matt Ouimet cleaned things up, it became kind of a revolving door.
Yeah, it seems like they stay no more than 2 years at the most,
Yeah, and I'm not sure, of course they answer to the people above them. They answer to DeMauro, or, before that it was Chapek, but they answer to the head of Parks and Resorts and Experiences and Consumer Products and whatever. And they also answer to, above that, of course, the CEO. So, I'm not sure how much of a difference it makes. I know personality-wise it can make a difference, if personality-wise they're able to charm the enthusiasts as well as the cast members, it's a good thing. But as far as what actually happens in terms of policies and projects, I'm not sure it makes that much of a difference. And they like to rotate these people around and get them trained in different positions. I mean, this guy, Ken, who's going to run You know what? Maybe I should. You've got the same initial, got same first name and last name initial. Maybe I can kind of like pull a switcheroo and go over there. Anyway, he look at all the different roles he's had with me. You know, so hopefully that'll be a good thing, because people heard, oh, he's coming over from he's being promoted from consumer products. No, not a consumer products guy running Disneyland. It's like, he's not a consumer products guy. He renovated Disney Springs. He was, Disney Vacation Club, Adventures by Disney. He's had all these other roles, so hopefully that's a good thing for Disneyland. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
I think the other good thing out of this is Josh has a really good reputation for being with the Disney fans, like for the fans, and he's I've seen him on a couple different vlogs that I watch on YouTube, Disney ones, and he seems like very friendly and spends time with them just as much, and I would say the same for who's the current one right now, the Campbell. I can't think of her first name, but she was also very much in with the Disney fans also, and I think that they recognize the importance for these vloggers and podcasters and different people, the role that they play, that they could play in this whole thing. But
well, that's and I know there's a lot of there's people who have their gripes about Bob Chapek, but it's not necessarily a bad thing having the CEO of the entire company be somebody who came up through the parks division. It's for so long it's been studio people, right? I mean, you had. Bob Iger's been great, right? Now he came up from the television side of things, and before him, was Michael Eisner, and movies, studio. He came from Paramount. I don't think it's a bad thing having someone who, the parks people, being CEO, and we'll see. We'll see how it all shakes out going forward. It's going to be some interesting times. Now, let's talk about a project that's apparently still going forward. Disneyland reveals new details about planned Disney Vacation Club timeshare tower. I think Disney hates it when you call it a timeshare, but anyway, that's what the newspaper said. Disney unveiled new renderings and blueprints for a planned 350-room Disney Vacation Club timeshare tower at Disneyland Hotel, and that show a tiered section with grand villa rooftop balconies, poolside garden units, and an intriguing interactive water feature. Wow. The new Disneyland DVC details were revealed during a town hall webinar for Anaheim residents in the Walnut Street neighborhood next to the planned project, which took place on Thursday, May 21st. The town hall presentation suggests that the Disneyland DVC project is still in the works despite Disney's plans to pause $900 million in construction and refurbishment projects at its theme parks as a result of the ding coronavirus outbreak. This is the residents they're presenting this to live to the west of the resort, because Walnut Street is a street that borders the resort on the west side. And if you go across the street, if you're driving north on the street, on the right-hand side, there's Disneyland Hotel, there's Mickey and Friends parking structure. But if you, on the left-hand, there's residences, And granted, they're all basically like one-story, maybe two-story residences. And so if you're going to build a new building close to that, so they as the story said, it's tiered, so that like the parts that are closest to the residential area are not as high as the parts that are going, further away. The blueprints revealed during the town hall webinar show an L-shaped DVC complex with a 12-story tower in the front and a tiered section in the rear that descends to 5 stories. A pool, spa, and interactive water feature intended for exclusive use by DVC members are tucked behind the planned tower. A Mickey-shaped spa touted by Disney was not shown in the plans. The DVC tower plans showed a pair of garden units next to the pool. Designs for the Disney Vacation Club property at the Disneyland Hotel are still evolving, according to Disney officials. A scale model rendering of the Disneyland DVC towers show approximately 10 expansive Grand Villa rooftop balconies on the multi-level tiered section of the building, overlooking the Walnut Street neighborhood. And further on in the story, it says the Disney Vacation Club debuted in 1991 as a flexible points-based membership system rather than the traditional fixed week time slot model. So, yeah. I think that if Disney could, all of their hotels would be nothing but DVC. Because it's like guaranteed, if they guaranteed money for Disney. But anyway, it's all a matter of how many people have bought into it, So, do you think you're going to become a member of the DVC anytime soon?
No.
No?
It's kind of expensive.
All right.
No, not really.
Are you down with DVC? No.
I think that if I was a frequent person to Walt Disney World, I think I would consider it, but I mean, Disneyland just has the one right now, California Adventure, or Grand Californian.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, there's cheaper options, that are just as close to.
I don't know. I mean, when I go someplace, when I go to a Disney, when I go to like Walt Disney World, traditionally I've liked to spend as little time in my hotel room as possible.
Yeah, too.
So it's kind of like, why do I want an expensive, accommodation? But if you're somebody who wants to, if you're somebody who goes once or twice a year, and you're always going to want to go there, year after year after year after year, then sure, why not? But anyway, life sometimes changes, so you don't know. But
true.
Okay, well, we're gonna get into kind of more news related to the virus. So sorry about that if you don't want to hear it. Shanghai Disneyland reopens, serving as blueprint for Disney's California and Florida parks. The reopening of Shanghai Disneyland with a host of mandated COVID-19 health and safety measures is expected to serve as a blueprint for how Disney's U.S. theme parks will need to function if they hope to swing open their gates in the next few months. The Shanghai Disneyland theme park in China reopened on Monday, May 11th, with additional health and safety measures including face masks, temperature checks, reduced attendance, social distancing, and constant sanitization. So there's a lot of different things they're doing, and we'll have to see what they adapt to the stateside parks. By Disney theme park standards, the sold-out Shanghai Disneyland looked like a ghost town. There were wide open spaces as far as the eye could see, and no crowds in sight. By 10:30 a.m. Shanghai time, the wait was still 5 minutes for the Tron Light Cycle Power Run roller coaster and Pirates of the Caribbean Battle for Sunken Treasure, the park's two marquee attractions. Social distancing was enforced in attraction queues and on rides. with riders sitting in every other row and empty seats left between parties. A few fans waited in line for the Fantasia Carousel, with each group maintaining social distance. The merry-go-round was 3/4 full during one ride, with the horses naturally spread more than 1 meter apart. The horses were naturally spread. I don't know.
Just they already are.
Yeah.
Built that way. Yeah.
I didn't realize they're using real horses, but social distancing was the new normal in Shanghai Disneyland restaurants, too. Dining room occupancy was reduced by 50%. Table tent cards indicated which tables were unavailable. Queues with markers were established outside restaurants. And here's a quote: "We will have cast members throughout the park doing continuous wiping down, sanitizing, and disinfecting all the high-touch surfaces," Bolstein said during the Chinese media tour. "We will have cast members at the entrance of every attraction reminding our guests to maintain social distancing." So instead of saying, "Fill in all the available space, move all the way down," you're going to say, "Stop that. Don't get so close." Yeah.
Oh, boy.
All right. So, and more good news. Disney parks could burn through $27 million a day amid the coronavirus pandemic. Analysts warn. So, an analyst report from Wells Fargo Securities entitled "How I Added an Extra Bank Account to You and Then Charged You for It." No, I'm sorry. That's entitled "Thanos Returns as Coronavirus," estimates that the shuttering of Disney resorts around the globe amid the COVID-19 pandemic could cost the Disney Parks, Experiences, and Consumer Products Division up to $7.5 billion in operating income over the next 3 quarters. Pleasant, yeah. Operating expenses at Disney's domestic parks run at approximately $1 billion per month, according to Wells Fargo Securities analysts. Furloughing Disney theme park employees and implementing other cost-cutting measures save the company approximately $333 million a month, according to the report. Well, Wells Fargo Securities estimates Disney Parks division could burn $6 billion to $7.5 billion in operating income over the next 9 months. That worked $1.9 million to $27.3 million per day. But not everyone agrees with the Wells Fargo Securities assessment, or a separate account without telling you and charging you for it. Never mind.
Oh, wow.
Sorry. The reopening of Shanghai Disneyland is the first of several positive catalysts still to come for Disney parks, according to J.P. Morgan analyst Alexa Quadrani. "I have a huge degree of confidence in their ability to endure this crisis," Quadrani told Barron's. Did Quadrani tell you that, Lynn? It says they told Barron's, so I don't know.
Yeah, I remember that.
I figure that's talking to you and your wife. This is a top-notch management team, and Bob Chapek, whose most recent background has been the parks, is now CEO. So you talk about having an expert in the field running the company. Well, so those are dueling analysts' opinions. We will see what happens. There was another Register story from Brady McDonald. What an attendance cap could mean for crowded Disney parks in the coronavirus era. Disney, Universal, SeaWorld, Six Flags, Cedar Fair, Legoland, and regional U.S. theme parks are expected to operate with social distancing friendly attendance caps in place once they reopen following their extended closures. Post-closure theme park capacity limits will vary widely by state and change over time as each location gets the outbreak under control. But most parks are expected to reopen with limits of 25% to 75% of normal capacity. But what does normal capacity mean? Is that the fire code limit for a park? A theoretical maximum capacity? Or the average daily attendance?
I don't think anyone knows. I don't think anyone knows anything.
Yeah, people are just guessing, aren't they?
Yeah.
Disneyland's capacity was approximately 75,000 visitors before the addition of Galaxy's Edge, and is approximately 85,000 when you include the new 14-acre Star Wars-themed land, according to touring plans, which uses big data and statistical analysis to calculate daily theme park crowd sizes. And an attendance cap of 25% would bring Disneyland's theoretical capacity down to 21,250 visitors. A 50% cap would work out to 42,500. Disneyland attracts an average of 51,000 visitors per day, according to the Themed Entertainment Association.
Depends on the day.
Yeah, well, that's the average when you take the yearly attendance. And
Yeah.
Disney California Adventure attracts an average of 27,000 daily visitors, according to the Themed Entertainment Association. Touring Plans estimates the capacity for DCA at about 50,000 visitors. DCA could allow 12,500 visitors a day with a 25% attendance cap and 25,000 with a 50% cap, based on Touring Plans estimates.
Okay.
And of course, MiceChat.com has updates still. They have a Disneyland update, weeks, not months, from Dusty Sage, and they're talking about, what could happen as far as reopening. And they had another one, Disneyland update, embracing the spooky season. So, they're already talking about Halloween type stuff. And in that update, they mentioned the International Association of Amusement Parks and Attractions, which is IAPA. They talk about some of their guidelines that have been put forth, like, here are some of their suggestions. Require visitors to wear protective face masks on rides. The dynamics of some attractions may prohibit the use of masks. I can picture like some roller coasters with loops.
Oh, yeah.
I can picture like if somebody's mask falls off and the train gets stuck upside down because the mask is caught in the wheels. That'll be fun. Establish guidelines to deal with visitors who refuse to wear protective masks or want to wear ineffective or offensive face coverings. I mean, there's a lot of suggestions here, but you know what? If you go to our website, thesweepspot.com, you click through, you can read all of these stories, because we will link to them in full.
Speaking of masks, you can get a Sweep Spot mask, Ken?
Can you?
We get our t-shirts through TeePublic. So if you go to TeePublic, search the Sweep Spot, they have an option at the bottom for Sweep Spot masks.
Yeah, that's another reason to go to our website. Go to thesweepspot.com and you can click through to TeePublic. But, what good is all that unless you have planned your next Disney getaway vacation? Now is the time to plan it, folks. Because you need to plan months and months out in advance to get the best planning. So, what do? You go to concierge.com. CONCIEARS.com. If you go to concierge.com, and they will be your magical vacation planners, because they're our travel planning partners. All they focus on is Disney. So, if you want to go to Walt Disney World or Disney Cruise or Adventures by Disney's or Disney's Aulani in Hawaii, even Disneyland, if you have a getaway vacation in mind, contact concierge.com. Tell them that the Sweep Spot sent you. Book with them, and you'll get a special gift. They are the people to go to because this is all they focus on. It's not going to cost you anything extra. It's just going to take a whole lot of stress off of you, and they will tell you things you never knew you never knew. I sent my own mother to concierge.com. So go to concierge.com and thank you so much to them for being our travel planning partners.
Thanks a lot, Ken. Okay, we're going to try something new. We're going to start a new series on the podcast, and we're going to talk about different lands in the park, and we're going to take one land each time we talk about something in this series, and we're going to talk about Fantasyland tonight. And what we're going to do is kind of look at the land overall, talk about the architecture, the placement of the land, the entrances, how they blend in with the other lands, just, some of the attractions and shops and how everything kind of blends together, the music, the atmosphere, if there's smells, kind of just look at everything within a land at Disneyland. So we're going to talk about Fantasyland. What do you think about that, Ken?
All right, I guess.
Yeah. So, no, go ahead.
No, I'm happy to do this. I like Fantasyland.
Yeah, I thought we'd start there because I think Walt's. I think it was one of the lands that obviously, a lot of the films and inspiration for the park. From the films that he put in the park, started in Fantasyland. I almost like to think of it as the heart of the park, in a way. Yeah,
I see what you mean.
Because the carousel was kind of an inspiration for starting the park. How he would the story, go to Griffith Park and with his daughters and sit on the bench and wanted to build a place that a family could be together and do things. So.
Yeah, didn't he go there for Walt's Barn?
Yeah, he was there.
He'd go to Griffith. No, wait. Oh, wait. I think I got that backwards.
Yeah. So, so let's talk about Fantasyland. It was probably, I don't know if Main Street was the first thing that he wanted to develop, but I definitely know that he probably wanted a carousel in the park, and I think he had the idea for the castle and things. So
yeah.
I
think if you look at the park overall, it's kind of the world through the eyes of a Midwestern farm boy from from the 20th century, and Fantasyland is most of the theming is very European. Mm-hmm. You've got Main Street, which is his boyhood home. You've got, like Adventureland, which is exotic. And you have Frontierland, the old Wild West. It's kind of like for his grandsons, Mm-hmm. And Fantasyland was kind of, I'm sure, inspired by his daughters. And by the time Disneyland was built, it's, he's building it for his granddaughters, And
a lot of the movies that are represented in Fantasyland, take place in Europe too.
Yes.
So that kind of has that influence too. But let's give an overview of the land and what's in there currently, and then we can kind of talk about the evolution of the land and maybe some of the little special things that are inside the land. But when you have Sleeping Beauty's castle, and that was didn't always have a walkthrough, so it wasn't always an attraction.
No.
And I think it was I'm guessing here. I don't have the dates. I just casual conversation here, but I think it was like 1958 or something like that. Where
for Sleeping Beauty.
Yeah. And we know, of course, it closed in September 2001 and reopened, upgraded in 2008.
Yeah.
And
we had to that was squeezed in,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it wasn't like it was originally built
for that. Yeah.
For that. It was one of those things that had to be squeezed in, and that gives it a certain charm,
It does. Those hallways are really narrow, and you wouldn't know that it wasn't originally developed for it when you're in there, because it's obviously been there a long time now. But it's definitely the castle's on in front of all the movies that they show, and it's
very very iconic.
Very iconic. Probably the most photographed. Between Disney World and Disneyland, probably the most photographed building. I don't know.
Yeah.
If it is, but it's definitely up there. And we have, so we're just going to talk about, we have Peter Pan's Flight. We have Mr. Toad. And so those two original 1955 attractions. Snow White. Snow White is another original that's, all these have kind of had, they've been changed a little bit.
Yeah.
Upgraded.
They were all overhauled in 1983.
Yeah.
But there's been little changes since then.
And we don't know what's going to happen with, with Snow White currently when the park closed. If you're listening to this, in the future,
they were working on that, right? And then I think there might be some cutbacks, so maybe it'll be like Snow White and the Five Dwarves or something.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know how that all works. Like if
I think two of them got furloughed permanently or something.
You think when they start a project, you think that money's already budgeted aside? Like
yeah. No, that's already. Yeah. There's no way they would have started that unless they were already, that money was set aside and, yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. They can always cut things, but, so anyways, so we have Snow White and we have Pinocchio, which is not an original attraction to the land. That was added in 83.
Mm-hmm.
And was that before that, in that same area, was it the Mickey Mouse?
Yeah, it was the Fantasyland Theater. Yeah, and that's one of the things that they don't bother to work around. Like if you watch Saving Mr. Banks, there's a scene. It's set in the early '60s or the early or mid '60s.
Yeah,
and Walt Disney takes P.L. Travers and they go and they ride the carousel, and they don't even bother to hide. Like, if you look in the background, you can see Pinocchio.
Yeah.
That's, geeks like us will notice that, but the average moviegoer is not going to say, hey, wait a minute, Pinocchio wasn't there. It was Mickey Mouse Theater.
Yeah, a lot of people just assume that it's
Theater,
been there, just as long as the other ones. Which is a compliment in a way, because it just shows how well it blends in, a newer attraction. Well, newer compared to those.
I think it had originally. I think that attraction had been designed for. It might have been in Florida, but they had were figuring out they were going to put that in the Discovery Bay project, you know, and then which was going to have a little circus area, but that fell through. So when they redid Fantasyland, I'm sure they said, well, we've already got all this work done for, you know, all of these designs for Pinocchio. Why don't we put the Pinocchio attraction in?
Right.
You know?
And then we have, so of course in the middle we have King Arthur's Carousel. But then we have sort of like we have Dumbo, and we have Casey Jr. Kind of like the Dumbo area in a way, you could call it. There's like two little mini areas within, and that's sort of one. Just because you have two attractions based on the same movie in that same area. Then you have the Storybook Canal Boats, which was open. I don't know if it was like on opening day, but I know that it was within that first few weeks or so.
They had a version of it, but it wasn't. It didn't really have the scenery.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. What Disneyland of 1955 was a very, very different thing than what we have now. So.
Well, yeah, trees were very, not matured, and just a lot of, they didn't have all the money that they have now.
Right.
It's built on the cheap, if you could say, but. Then we have the other mini land, I like to call it. It's the Teacups, and then Alice in Wonderland. And that was redone in 2014, Alice in Wonderland. I know that. Did you get a chance to? I can't remember if we went on that.
I have not ridden the new Alice. They now that's another little mini land that was created by the 1983 renovation, because the Teacups were kind of a little bit close to where the carousel is now, like a little bit off from that. They moved them over there so that they were right there by Alice in Wonderland. So you have the two attractions right there. Two attractions based on one animated movie.
Yeah.
Would Disney do anything like that now? I mean, Casey Jr. and Dumbo, and then Alice and the Teacups. I mean, it's kind of interesting that.
Well, would they build a ride with the capacity? All the rides that they're building nowadays are, bigger capacity attractions.
Right. The Fantasyland dark rides.
Right.
Those. You've got those 5 ride-through attractions, very low capacity, especially Peter Pan and Toad. But people will wait for them. They're popular. And now think back to when Mr. Toad. Think back to when Disneyland first opened. Okay, The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad was a movie that came out in 1949. So that was 6 years prior. And Peter Pan came out in like the early 50s. So like 53 or whatever. So
yeah.
So those were like still, and you have to remember that movies would come out in the theater and they might come back in the theater. I mean, they might have a longer run in theaters back then because they kind of traveled around and stuff like that. So these were like new movies still.
Yeah, they were.
It's like, oh, okay, well, we're gonna make a couple of our cornerstone attractions are going to be these relatively recent movies, but also the kind of attraction they are kind of transcends the movie. Who doesn't want to fly over London? In a flying ship. or take a wild drive, So even if you haven't even seen the movies, those are kind of some fun things to do.
Because a lot of people probably haven't even seen, the Mr. Toad, the Ichabod Mr. Toad.
Oh yeah.
Shorts. I don't even think I saw them until I was an adult, until later.
Right.
But I always went on the rides. On the ride because it was fun. It didn't matter, how well the movie did or didn't, or if anyone had even heard of it. If you build a good attraction, people are going to go on it.
And what I can remember even before the 1983 renovation, I used to, when I was that young, I wouldn't go on any of the roller coasters or anything like that. But what I did enjoy is I enjoyed those attractions, and often when I was visiting, I would be with my second cousin, we were very close in age, a few weeks apart, and we'd grown up together, so we were kind of like brothers. But we would go through there and we would yell at the villains, and it was kind of like, are the villains going to chase us now? You realize this is, magic in Disneyland, and it's, but there was kind of this feeling like, oh, if I call the villain a dummy, are they going to chase me through the rest of the ride or something? It was a little bit of a thrill, to yell at the villains when we were riding the attractions there.
That's funny. I never heard that before.
Yeah.
And then, so I always like to say that area that we've described right now, just the attractions part, I always say Fantasyland proper, because there still is an extension of Fantasyland that is still technically a part of Fantasyland, but not in the middle of it with the rest of that. And that is the Matterhorn bobsleds, which I was just reading that it wasn't part of Fantasyland until the early 70s. It was part of Tomorrowland.
No, I think it was listed in both.
Was it?
It was kind of listed in both. I think to highlight that it had two.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Tracks.
Yeah.
Because you have one side closer to Fantasyland, one side closer to Tomorrowland, and that kind of highlights that there's two tracks.
Well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have Matterhorn, and then we also have It's a Small World over at the other end there, which didn't come until what, 65-ish, I think, 66,
somewhere around, yeah. It's because it had been at the fair, the World's Fair, 1964 World's Fair, and then they brought it over. But the theater's there now too, the outdoor theater, the amphitheater, and when we worked there, ever since the late 80s, basically that area was considered its own area from a custodial perspective. Before that, like really on slow days, Fantasyland would be all of Fantasyland as it's designated in the map. But when I started to work there, it was a separate area. It was Small World Matterhorn, which is kind of self-explanatory. It's the area that encompasses It's a Small World and the Matterhorn. But that over there, you used to have an Utopia, which was basically a duplicate of the Tomorrowland Utopia at the time. And then you had the motorboat cruise,
right,
which was, I considered, like the least impressive attraction in the park because you had less control than you did over an Utopia car. The steering wheel didn't really do anything. You had a pedal that would make you either go a little bit faster or not, and so it.
Yeah.
But for a kid, that might be fun because you've got your own boat and you're piloting it around underneath the the monorail and the Autopia cars and all that stuff.
Yeah, it gave
But-
another view of the park, another unique view that we don't get anymore, in a way.
Yeah, I mean, they originally before they had expanded with the Small World and everything, they had a Midgetopia.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, that's what it was called, folks. It wasn't called Little Personatopia. I'm sorry. And Fantasyland was expanded when they put in It's a Small World. They pushed the train tracks back, and yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. There's another part, and I don't even know if it's technically part of Fantasyland, but it definitely is themed that way, is that new area where they have the princesses, the Royal Hall area, that, where Carnation Gardens used to be?
Fantasy Fair.
Fantasy Fair area. Yeah, is that, I guess that would technically be, part of, I mean, it's next to the castle, which is part of
Yeah.
Fantasyland. So it's kind of been extended into the hub a little bit now.
Yeah, Fantasyland's been extended a little bit there,
Mhm.
hasn't it? Which, you go on the other side of the castle and they have the Snow White Grotto.
Right. Right.
So it kind of parallels that.
So Fantasyland is actually probably one of the probably the biggest area-wise in the park, I would think. I don't know if Galaxy's Edge
Pretty large,
yeah,
but
Galaxy's Edge might be bigger now, but I mean, you think of all the other lands. I mean, Tomorrowland. I guess Tomorrowland's pretty big, but I still don't think it's as wide and
as far as like
area.
guest walking area, Adventureland's tiny.
I know, huh? That in New Orleans is still.
So and New Orleans is very compact, but
Frontierland's really shrunk too over the year. Losing the ranch and part of the island and.
Well, the walkable guest area, when the first couple years of the park, if you think about it, the walkable guest area was a lot less. I mean, they had purposely designed it, I think, where you would mostly you would walk back out of a land the way you came.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even sure Frontierland and Adventureland were connected. I don't know.
Oh, the little walkway.
Maybe by that little bridge or whatever. But it, you didn't have the Big Thunder Trail because that was all taken up by the
the mine train.
The mine train, the live animals, all that stuff. And before New Orleans Square and all that. But yeah, Fantasyland though. I mean, that's you've got such that iconic entrance to it. The castle, notice that you have a sign for Adventureland, you've got a sign for Frontierland, you got a sign for Tomorrowland, or at least we did for a while. You have one for Critter Country.
Mm-hmm.
There's no sign for New Orleans Square really, and Fantasyland didn't. Was the original that didn't have a. It didn't have an actual sign. It was just the castle just served as such.
Right.
It was so you're focused on that when you're walking down Main Street. You didn't need a sign for Fantasyland. It was just there. It is. There's Fantasyland. Of course, Galaxy's Edge doesn't have one either, which the new edition. But
Toontown does.
Yes. Yeah. And so Fantasyland is kind of allowed to be it's a community on its own. You have when it was rebuilt in 83, you went from the tournament theme to a Bavarian village sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got the music that's playing from the carousel and from the Calliope and from Dumbo. And those are various songs that you hear. You have the restaurant, Red Rose Tavern, that next to Pinocchio. So it's like a little village, its own little thing.
Did you? I've always heard, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, but I've heard a lot of people saying that, Walt he originally wanted Fantasyland to be the way it is now, but he just didn't have the money, so that's why we had the tent look, kind of more medieval. I don't know what. Yeah, I guess tents or.
This is the
Tournament?
medieval
Yeah,
tournament.
tournament.
Yeah, the medieval tournament thing.
I mean, have you ever heard anything like that he wanted to have it look the way it is now, or just assumption?
I'm trying to remember if I read that anywhere in particular, but it's, if you look, there was a lot of stuff they just couldn't do right away.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, come on, construction took roughly a year.
I know, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that would be ridiculous now. It takes them multiple years to do theme parks now.
Yeah.
And so Fantasyland, I'm pretty sure he would have had a lot more plans for it. I mean, you look at when he passed away, the kind of stuff he was doing. They were working on Pirates of the Caribbean,
mm-hmm.
which, and then they had expanded the back. I mean, they had extra land back there that, I mean, it used to be part of the backstage area. And then when they pushed the train tracks north
mm-hmm.
and put in It's a Small World, it created all that extra space, which eventually became, the Fantasyland Theater and also the ranch before it became, But for a while, that was just meadow, field area back there. And the speculation is that had he lived, Walt Disney would have, built some attractions maybe on the scale of Pirates of the Caribbean,
Right.
Back there, you can expand Fantasyland with, the attractions that are there now, they have been getting little improvements over the years.
Oh yeah.
But there's a lot of charm to them. Those dark rides especially.
Mm-hmm.
But if you could imagine, if you just said, okay, well, what if we just put everything we had towards this as far as technology, and if we had room, I mean, just imagine what they could do with a Peter Pan attraction that was much more, had more room and a higher budget.
Yeah, I was gonna say like maybe the size of Winnie the Pooh. What if it was that a building that size just for? I mean,
it could be. You could even make kind of a roller coaster, or the original concept for Mr. Toad. They tossed around doing a roller coaster.
The and then the way because of room. I mean, look at how Alice in Wonderland is built right on top of Mr. Toad, basically, right?
Yeah, they had to.
I mean, kind of, like.
It's intertwined.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because Alice in Wonderland takes you. There's a reason it takes you. Up, and. I mean, you had to do that to fit it in there.
Yeah.
One of the things that we got to do as cast members is behind the, if they're called Prince and Princess restrooms still, I don't know, or
I think so.
The behind those restrooms is the maintenance bay for those three attractions: Toad, Pan, and Alice.
Mm-hmm.
If you go in there, you can hear the attractions operating. I mean, you can hear the different sound effects and everything like that. There's some ride vehicles back there. Upstairs is the Alice in Wonderland maintenance bay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you become aware of just how tightly wound the space is.
Yeah, they did amazing with what they had. I wanted to talk. Also mentioned, we mentioned a lot of the attractions. You mentioned the Red Rose Tavern. As far as food locations currently, I mean, we have just that's really the main one. There's obviously, carts and different things, walk-up counters, but that's mainly the only restaurant in the area that was previously called Village House. That we, and the theming of that.
It had been extended from Pinocchio.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that wasn't there. Obviously, wasn't there before '83 because that was
no. They had the Welch's. They had the Welch's grape juice stand or whatever they called it, which had some artwork that I think might be lost to the ages there.
Yeah. So it's like an Italy theme, Italian theme, right?
Yeah. I mean, Pinocchio comes from Italy. Snow White is what, German?
Mm-hmm.
But you have the the British section over on the other side. You've got Peter Pan and Toad and Alice.
Mm-hmm.
Dumbo and Casey, that had been set in Florida, but of course it's a traveling circus. It could have gone to Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because people, whenever there's anything that's based on an animated movie, like Tarzan, for instance, people go, "Oh, you can't. That should be in Fantasyland."
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, really? Does that really fit in Fantasyland? I mean, it's Fantasyland is heavily European in inspiration, so I'm not sure. Now, just a moment ago when you're talking about restaurants, I was thinking, dang, wouldn't it be nice if they had a restaurant near It's a Small World that had like great food from around the world?
Yeah, that's true. Like a mini, I was gonna say a mini Epcot, but kind of like a mini
World Showcase sort of thing.
Yeah, but just food. They could do something like that where the theater is. That would be perfect. But
well, I think they like having the theater, but it's kind of like that's such a tempting space to be used for something else.
Yeah, it's good to have that because they can hold all different kind of functions there. Not just for what they have it for shows, but but Village Red Rose Tavern, I like the theming. It's probably one of my favorite places to eat inside, besides obviously like Blue Bayou and stuff, but as far as eating inside, I think it's one of my favorite places. I think they did a really good job of the decor and the architecture and the immerse. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's and really it's kind of like the way they built that all. It's kind of like not obviously not the theming or decoration of it, but structurally it's kind of like Norland Square.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a huge basement to that.
And the ceiling's really high, and it's a big.
The ceiling's high, and then we had a break room downstairs. Not just for custodial, but for cast members.
Yeah, restrooms. They had a food prep kitchen area, offices.
Yeah, it was quite extensive down below there, and there's a lot of details in Fantasyland, though. A lot of little details, like the sword and the stone.
Mm-hmm.
And they used to do a full-blown show with that, with a live brass band and Merlin. And
that's too bad. I used to like watching that when I was, when we were out there working. I enjoyed watching that.
Yeah, if Fantasyland wasn't crowded enough already, that was you get one of those shows going and people crowd around there. But that the evil queen from Snow White peering at people from above.
Oh yeah.
I used to tell people that's my supervisor when I was working, and they used to, that was pretty nice. They the Snow White Grotto we were mentioning earlier.
Oh yeah.
That's a nice little detail I don't know if that's replicated at any other park, but originally it was supposedly a gift, and the original figures were marble, but I'm sure those have been replaced a long time ago. But that the figures were, all the same height. So Snow White would be the same height as the dwarves. So of course they used forced perspective to make it look like Snow White is larger than the dwarves.
Mm.
But that's a nice little corner, and
Mm-hmm.
I ended up proposing over there, and that was. I mean, I know a million people have done the same thing, but my wife was a huge Snow White fan, so I correctly guessed that she'd want to be proposed over there. But that's kind of interesting because that Snow White Grotto is there, and then so it's two distinct areas for Snow White. You have to go into the other part of Fantasyland and go to the Snow White. So that's kind of interesting that there's two little Snow White sections.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't really think about that, but those little areas are not really secret, but the pathways are very small on both sides of the castle. They're a really nice place to be, nice place to take pictures. The little bridges.
It's so easy. It's easy to miss them when if you're rushing around trying to get on the Matterhorn and trying to get over, to Galaxy's Edge or whatever. It's easy to miss these little details,
Yeah, and there's the Christmas tree, right? Whose tree is that? It's right there on the right side.
Oh, Herb Ryan. The Herb. Yeah, don't get me started on that. Some Imagineers had planted a tree over there as a tribute to Herb Ryman, who, of course, he did there's the Lost Weekend where Walt Disney had him do some artwork so they could get funding for Disneyland and stuff like that. That was put there, and then I guess I don't know if Disney, it was put there by the Imagineers, and I guess landscaping didn't realize that so they removed it. And I knew a guest who complained until they replaced it with another tree. But
so it's still there today, right? I mean, the replaced one on.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they've been installing show elements there for the fireworks shows and stuff like that. I mean, you used to have the live swans in the moat there.
Yeah, now they're just animatronic. No.
Well, last I heard, one of them said Aflac, and then that was.
I thought they were still there. I think they're still there.
I don't know. I thought they were removed because with all the fireworks stuff, it became an issue.
Okay.
Yeah, it was. Well, I didn't see. Every once in a while, I'd have to change the batteries on them to keep them going. But no, the another little detail that it's easy to overlook is Monstro. Not Monstro himself. He's easy to see, but his eye moving, and the spray from the blowhole. Mm-hmm. If those are still working,
yeah, true. I don't know.
That's a nice little detail that it's easy to miss. So yeah.
And then we've talked about this on our myths and show, and the Golden Spike, how that had been said to be the middle of the park, which is not, never was. It was this
is a survey marker.
Yeah, to line up the center of Main Street with the castle. But it's still important. It's something that's there and historical. There's a lot of remnants of past attractions and old ticket booths that were there from the old, when they used to sell tickets. You needed a ticket to get on attraction.
Coupons, yeah. The A through E coupons.
And there's still a lot of those buildings around. They're, used for other things now. But, you have the Casey Jr., the little building right there by the queue. They used to sell tickets out of that, or take tickets out of that. They have the Mushroom in front of Alice in Wonderland. The lighthouse, but I don't think I've looked at that lighthouse, and I don't think anyone could stand inside there. I don't know if that was used or if it was like a building attached to it at some point that someone stood in. I mean, it's literally like, I don't know, like 4 feet wide. I don't know. I mean, someone could, but it wouldn't be very comfortable.
Well, so what? It's not very comfortable to do half the jobs
that's
there.
True. The Matterhorn, when you first, when you walk towards, there's a little building there in the middle, and you have A and B side queues. There's a little window straight ahead there, and that was where they would take the tickets for the attraction, I believe. But that used to be operable, the window there. We're just kind of mentioning little things, little small details. There is also, I have a whole bunch of things here I wrote down, but the carriages. So the carousel, when Walt first purchased it, it was 1920, originally built in 1922, and when he purchased it, it had different horses that I don't know the names, like there's galloping and jumpers and different, and so he wanted them to be all be the same, and there was also like carriages things that you could sit down in. You've seen some of the carousels that I think they have one now that they rebuilt.
Yeah, they added one in for
10, 15 years ago
to make it accessible.
Yeah, but originally it did have some of those, and they repurposed those as part of the Casey Jr. train now.
Oh yeah.
I think it's the first 2 cars, I believe, behind the train.
Well, you have to remember there's 2 Casey Jr. trains too.
Right. But I don't think they've used. Every time I've been there, I've noticed there's only 1 train. So I don't know when was the last time they had 2 trains running.
Yeah, it's going to be like the
long time ago. Because even when we worked there, there was that one that was always sitting in the back there.
It's like a keelboats,
Yeah.
I remember a time they used both of them. Now they don't use any of them.
Yeah. And then you have the, weather vanes. And weather vanes are things that are on top of buildings that they used for, was it originally used for like wind direction?
Yeah.
And a lot of them, are themed. And there is a lot that are themed in Fantasyland. There's a golden crown, above the King Arthur's carousel. There's a crocodile above Peter Pan. There's the stork, the baby above, was it Casey Jr., I believe? And then Pinocchio, there's a whale, weather vane. And so, you have, and then Mr. Toad has a little like silhouette of him driving a car, of a car. So those are like little detail, little things that you can look for. They're on top of all the buildings there. I did want to talk about the, you mentioned the music. There's music that comes from, different places. The queue lines, that's like a double.
Yeah. Yep. You're being redundant.
Yeah.
And not only that, but you're being repetitive.
Redundantly repetitive. So yeah, there's music everywhere, and it's like that. I mean, not just Fantasyland, the whole park, but you have several different, just many places where you have. I mean, you go over by the teacups. You have that famous, do 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 do. Yeah. And like you mentioned, the Village House area. You had that music in the restrooms that always played. The polka music.
Yeah.
So, speaking of restrooms, I wanted to mention that this area has 3 guest restrooms in it. We have the Village House Red Rose Tavern restrooms. They're right next to the restaurant. Then we have the it's called King and Queen now. It's the because
they've gotten older, I guess.
Yeah, so that's called the King and Queen, and then the one by the Fantasyland Theater is Prince and Princess.
So there's no confusion.
And it makes sense, right? Because that restroom was rethemed, I think, like 2005 or 6. I think it was like 6. It's just before I left to be, with the cards for the stall doors.
Yes. The playing cards
from Alice, the kind of theme with
Alice.
So you have those 3 guest restrooms right there. And Fantasyland is divided too, because you have the parade route that runs right kind of not in the middle, but it kind of separates the Matterhorn from it.
Yes.
In that area around. So it's a very busy area too, with the Matterhorn going on and all of that.
It is.
I also wanted to talk about some of the stuff, like you had mentioned, the area was divided into 2 when we worked there. We had Small World, Matterhorn Small World, and then we had Fantasyland. But Fantasyland, at the time when we worked there, also took care of North Ranch, which was technically part of Frontierland.
Yeah.
But we would go all the way to the Thunder Bridge, I guess you could call it, right there. I believe Frontierland took that area back now. I believe that walk area there.
Yeah, I think that's what we covered in the book. Yeah.
But the locker that we reported to for the area was behind the restaurant there, the Village House restaurant. And it was kind of centralized, but if you had to get something that was in Small World, or not Small World, like over by Storybook Land, then sometimes we could ask for help, from the Small World lead.
Right.
It's fairly close. They could come, they get out pretty quickly, especially if they're at the locker.
Yeah, I mean, unless we were rushing to do something else, if we were at the edge of our area and we would hear a call, we would, if we were working Small World, the Matterhorn area, we might be right there next to the teacups, and we hear, popcorn spill by the Alice in Wonderland entrance. I mean, the Fantasyland lead might be over by Big Thunder Ranch. We're right there. It was, break in on the radio. Oh, I got it. Yeah, I mean, you do stuff like that unless you hated the person.
I think that we were encouraged to help each other. One team, one dream.
It was a mutual aid or whatever they call it.
Yeah, and so the areas that we had in Fantasyland, we're talking about this as a guest area. So we had several different areas, but in Fantasyland area, we had South Middle, which was out to the hub in front of the castle, kind of an overlap with Main Street there.
Yeah.
And then we'd go around all the way up through around the carousel and then up around Dumbo, I believe. And then off toward, and then did North Ranch North Ranch was, I'm trying to remember now because it's been a while. North Ranch also did not only the trail, the Thunder Trail, but it went over by the Teacups, right? It kind of crossed with South Middle?
No. North Ranch, because South Middle had the teacups and everything.
Oh, that's right.
and
That's
North
right.
Ra-
Oh, yeah.
They kind of met around Dumbo, you know.
That's right.
Unless I didn't do it right all those years.
I don't know. I think that when I did North Ranch, I think we just kind of all, I mean, the area, if you're in South Middle, obviously you wouldn't go down like by Big Thunder Trail, but I think everyone just kind of walked around everywhere, it seemed like to me.
Well, I mean, if only on really, except for really busy days, you had basically two sweeping areas out of the whole thing. You know, again, we're not counting the Small World Matterhorn area. And so you would have, you know, but you've got so many lines. So you might have somebody just sweeping lines, and that person is going to also sweep the area as they go through it. You know.
Yeah, you almost had to have a designated lines person because, you know, we were kind of sometimes encouraged to sweep some of the line if the lines were in your area, but some of those lines you had to wait in line with the guests. You couldn't back sweep it.
Yeah, there just wasn't the room.
Especially Dumbo in the day, you know, in that day and age, really narrow, you know, the chains there. I guess all of them really were kind of that way. And especially like Alice in Wonderland or something. I'm just trying to think of all those now. It's like, yeah, you definitely had, I think you had like, you know, quite a few lines. And then you had the, just some of the things that we got. I mean, Tinkerbell would fly and land, you know, just by our locker, you know, behind Fantasyland there. That was something that was neat, you know. You had the fireworks going on. You had the parade coming through part of the area over there. Just a lot going on. But the thing with Fantasyland is it seemed to me that, especially once fireworks were over, that area pretty slow, you know.
Well, yeah, a lot of the, I mean, people kind of think about it as, oh, that's for kids, you know. That's where you take the kid, and you know, you're getting to the point where it's late in the evening, and a lot of the people who have very young kids are clearing out.
Yeah.
You know, they're going home or going back to their hotel or whatever. You know.
Yeah. So then over, you know, we talked about the Fantasyland for Custodial, and we talked about Small World, Matterhorn Small World area. And there we had Small World, and we had an area we called Video, which was one of my...
Video or Meadow.
It was my first area I was assigned to, like my first day out of training. And I think Vernon was my lead over there, but I had Video. And it was just the area in front of the train station and the theater, and then down towards the entrance of Toontown, and then I think it kind of ended around the parade, like around where the shop there for the parade stroller area used to be right there. But that was, you know, it seemed like a small area now that I think about it, but not a very busy area. But we also had those.
It was. It had a lot of leaves.
I was going to say we used to get the dust mop thing and sweep the leaves.
And elevation changes. Yeah. You had to constantly walk uphill.
I believe that area is still slurry too.
It might be, yeah.
It's a different type.
One of the few areas.
It's a different type. I think it's a little more rougher, a little less slippery, but
yeah.
Yeah, so then you had that area, then you had Small World, which was mainly like from the Small World parade gate, like Small World attraction. And didn't that go all the way up to like around the Teacups?
I think it went down. It went down there because there was a popcorn wagon near the Matterhorn. So you had the popcorn wagon that's up by the backstage gate near the Small World shop, right? So that would get double. If you had a video person, that wagon would get double coverage from the Small World person and the video
I
person.
think they got rid of that popcorn wagon. I'm trying to remember last time I was in that area.
Hopefully they did.
Yeah, remember the kind of pavement that was there? It was like those pavers that were like 2x2s or something. Yeah.
But and then there's also, we used to have there was a coverage area that was called Matterhorn
Extension, right?
Well, there was extent. Well, yeah. On really, really busy days, it could be two separate. You had backside extension, because on really, really busy days, you would have someone who would basically be doing the area from the parade route, that popcorn wagon, over to the submarines, the lagoon. But then you had somebody who would cover the rest of the circumference of the Matterhorn, and then down towards the hub. On slow days, you would just have one person doing that, but busy days, you would.
Yeah.
On slow days, you might have a Matterhorn person and a Small World person, but much busier days, you would double up, and you'd have the two people covering the southern portion there, and then of course the meadow person or video.
Yeah, it seemed to me like just before I left, you'd only had the Small World video was one person, and then you had Matterhorn Extension, and that was one person. So you had two sweepers, a lead, lines, and the lines person in Small World also did Toontown lines when there wasn't. Yeah, no, they always did. Yeah. I was going to say when there wasn't a Toontown lead, but no, it was always that. They always did the.
Toontown was always kind of a semi-autonomous area. It wasn't completely its own area, even though it might have its own foreman and all that stuff. But, because there weren't that many lines. I mean, once you close down the motorboat cruise and Fantasyland Utopia, you have the Matterhorn, you've got
and
Small
the train
World.
Station.
And kind of like the train station. So you would send the lines person up into Toontown to help out there too.
Remember I remember many days, like on weekdays, we wouldn't have a Toontown lead, and it was Small World. Toontown would also be in charge of. I mean, you had a crew up there, but
yeah. And then there was. Well, also the day was, if you had a parade at all, the day was broken up by that. Mm-hmm. But, if you had shows at the theater, often you had somebody on your crew who would get pulled to help out with the cleanups there, just to help out with those cleanups. So, you might schedule your breaker or your lines person to do that or whatever.
Right. Wow. Yeah, I guess it just kind of depended on what you were given. I mean, technically you could, get by with just two people, but and then the trash crew. And that area, as far as trash, had quite a few trash cans because the parade route was lined with them on both sides, and then you went all the way around the Matterhorn, up to the subs, and then on the other side, up to like what is now, I think, the Tinkerbell area, over there.
Right, the Pixie Hollow.
There was even Fantasyland trash cans on the extension part, too, so.
Yeah, all the way up to the hub.
So it's quite a big area.
It is. It goes all the way from the hub, all the way back there to Toontown. That's quite,
and we had our locker for that. Kind of try to explain.
It's between. It's basically the old train route. It's It's between the Fantasyland Theater and Casey Jr.
Yeah.
We would go back there, and you'd have to pass by the break room that was attached to the boat storage for Storybook Land. You have to get past all that, and our supply locker was over there abutting Casey Jr.
So the train used to go right the back side of Casey Jr. and the Storybook. It was like right there. That alleyway.
Well, if you look at the old overhead aerial photos, and that tunnel that go to the ranch. That was, I'm sure, where the train used to go through.
Wow.
Yeah. And of course, that all got massively changed for Galaxy's Edge.
Yeah. Well,
it keeps changing. It's Disneyland is a work of art that just keeps getting changed.
Yeah, there was talks of making Fantasyland bigger with with Toontown, or maybe getting rid of Toontown. I've heard so many different things, but I think now with the Mickey's Runaway Railroad coming in, that kind of secures Toontown. I mean, I guess technically, if they did get rid of Toontown and made it Fantasyland, that the Mickey's Railroad would still fit.
You could still keep it,
which might have been some thinking, and just a backup plan maybe someday. But we talked about the theater, an attraction going in that area. It's a pretty big space there. But man, I've looked at newer satellite views, and Galaxy's Edge is like right up against that the back side of that theater now. There used to be that big walkway that you go through the. Well, you wouldn't go through the tunnel, but when you'd go down that alleyway, you turn right, and you kind of go down underneath, and then you'd come up on the back side of Toontown there. That's not there anymore. It's just me.
Because you had to go down. You were going under the train tracks. And that's all been repositioned. I mean,
it's still there, but it's just really really weird how they did that. But they're masters of making space. I think that if they were ever to extend more into the back area, that they would get rid of something like TDA, because that doesn't have to be right there, right?
There's a lot of people who would like to,
That would like what? Oh yeah, well, I don't mean like get rid of it, but move it off the property, because that doesn't technically have to be right there.
Well, before that was built, Disney used a lot of office space in nearby places, like major hotels and stuff like that.
They had some hiring buildings over by the stadium at one point, right? While TDA was being.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, of course, yeah.
But the idea was, let's build a new administration building here, and bring all these people on property. And then in theory, it was easier for the all the cast members who are out there in the front lines to go take care of their paperwork back there. Walk back there to take care of their paperwork. But now it's they could actually do a lot of that's online. I mean, that was completed mid-90s. It was like one of the last things that Frank Wells signed off on before he died in an accident.
Yeah, it had to have been. Probably like 94, 5. I'm thinking, because when I hired in end of 91, 92 with the foods, it was the old administration was where my interview and my training. So, it must have been just after that. Anyways,
Yeah, and that was before everything moved online.
Yeah.
You know, and then now, cast members have these things they can sign into, so they can do stuff from home or whatever. You know, they don't have to walk back to TDA to do it.
Well, we will see what happens with Fantasyland, because there still is technically some room over where the motorboat cruise was. Fantasyland Utopia is now kind of Utopia. They extended that, but there is some room kind of in that area over there where the seating area was built, where they built up for Light Magic, that little like platformed area. It's not really seating, more standing, I guess. But there's some room up there. If they wanted, they could, add to Fantasyland. But I think that it's a good overview of the area, and we hope to do this more often, because I'd like to do a discussion on some of the other lands in the park. So I hope you enjoyed that, and we'll see what happens the next time we do this. So maybe a few months from now, maybe a few weeks, we'll see how our schedule goes. Okay, well, that concludes episode 285 of the Sweet Spot Podcast.
Wow, I could listen to I could listen to myself all night. That was great. I love taking a trip to Fantasyland. It's
it was kind of
memories.
Kind of a different look, we do a lot of discussion on Fantasyland or the different areas of the park, but we talk mainly about maybe one attraction or two or three, but we don't talk about the land as a whole and the importance it has to the whole park and the location and the way what it offers. So I was really excited to do that discussion, and hope you enjoyed that too. Again, go to our website, thesweetspot.com. We have so much going on over there. We have our show notes from the show, past shows. We have our T-shirts. TeePublic has many things you can get besides T-shirts. You can order sweatshirts. You can order mugs. You can order masks. They have a plethora of different items.
A plethora. Yeah.
Different items with the Sweet Spot on it. So check that out. Also,
Plethora. Wasn't Plethora that woman that used to do the restroom?
Oh boy. And also, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'd love that. Join us for those live chats. Those are fun, and you get to, like Lynn said, you get to see that we have the perfect faces for podcasting. Really, it helps if you leave a review on, the Apple Podcasts, iTunes, whatever you call it, and let people know that we're here. I mean, tell your friends, if you want to punish them, that we're here. We're easy to find. We're on Mice Chat, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher. We are.
iHeart Media.
We are everywhere.
The iHeart Radio app, I should say. Yeah, we're
Google.
We're hard to miss. So let people know that they shouldn't miss us, and if they like Disneyland, past or present, or theme parks, or they just want to hear a couple of guys yapping away, they should listen.
Yeah, I've been told we're the perfect podcast to fall asleep to. So
that's high praise.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. Sign up for the Patreon if you haven't yet. We're going to have that bonus episode out any day now. So check that out. But anyways, thanks a lot. Really appreciate it. Everyone hang in there, and we will talk to you soon.